Law, Financial Inclusion, and G20 Goals. For this panel, we are joined by Professor Rashmi Patovari, Assistant Professor, Jindal Global Law School. Her areas of research are banking law, financial law, investment law, and environmental law, and she's currently pursuing her doctoral studies in the area of green finance. Our next panelist is Mr. Abhishek Awasthi, Senior Partner, AZB Partners. Mr. Awasthi has 14 years of experience and specializes in corporate M&A and real estate. He also advises on a broad range of acquisitions, joint ventures, private equity investments, and other funding transactions for key industries and sectors. Third, we have Mr. Amar Sundaram, General Counsel, Senior Vice President Legal, and Chief Compliance Officer, NEC Corporation India. With over 25 years of rich and diverse experience in the industry, Mr. Sundaram has gained expertise in governance, compliance, risk mitigation, and corporate advisory. We also have Ms. Bhumika Tripathi, General Counsel, EverEnviro Resource Management Private Limited. Ms. Tripathi has over 12 years of experience in contracts, project finance, compliance, land acquisition, and general corporate advisory. We also have with us Mr. Bhavin Gada, Founder and Senior Partner, Stratage Law Partners. He's a founding partner and has over 16 years of experience advising clients on investment transactions and M&A. I invite Professor Sidharth Chauhan to moderate this panel. Professor Chauhan read law at Harvard Law School and is presently an assistant professor and assistant dean at Jindal Global Law School and an affiliate with the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society at Harvard University. Over to you, Professor Sidharth, and have a great session.
Thank you so much, Professor Surbi. We are all going to be a very attentive audience after the great lunch we just had. A very warm welcome to our stellar panelists. So this morning we started talking about the legal profession and its potential role, what the role is and what the responsibilities include, what are the roles of G20 goals, and especially we focused on sustainability, good governance, social responsibility, and now we'll be talking about financial inclusion. Financial inclusion sort of adds another layer of values to the G20 goals. Financial inclusion is a major element of financial justice, and without its realization and access to finances is a major hurdle. And with that background in mind, today we'll be discussing major reforms in the banking sector, looking at digital access, responsible finance. So times have really changed, like especially if you see, we never really thought that just at one step we'll be making payments. But with that, we definitely have the kind of challenges and hurdles and the kind of challenges the digitalization poses. So with that background, I would like to start off with Mr. Sundaram. What kind of regulatory challenges do you think digitalization poses, and what are the legal reforms governments can bring in, and what are the legal architecture at this point?
Thank you, Sidharth. First and foremost, this is a wonderful audience and a very diversified audience. And I was just talking to one or two young students, and I said that the caption, next conclave that we have, the caption should be changed, and it should be role of women lawyers and the legal profession. That's the kind of women empowerment that we talk within the corporate sectors. That is the kind of women empowerment the government is talking about. G20 represents 85% of the global GDP. 75% of the global trade is represented by G20 countries, and 2/3 of the population is represented by G20 countries. So therefore, that is the importance of the G20 countries that we are talking about. Coming back to India, Sidharth, if you see last 5-10 years, how the changes have happened on the regulatory platform, and how there is a push towards ease of doing business. And you will see that there are a lot of changes that has come up. A lot of changes are coming up. For example, if you see the whole startup business, 125,000 startups have been registered as on date. Right? There is a whole new startups that is come up. A lot of them are household name. You name Swiggy, you name Zomato, you name Practo, you name Lysias, you name Delivery. Delivery just came out with a IPO size of some 5,000 crores. That's the kind of push that the government is doing. You talk about mudra reforms, the RBI mudra reforms is a great initiative which is aimed to fund the unfunded. So a loan up to 10 lakhs can be given to young entrepreneurs. And as on date, the government has disbursed some 18 lakh crores of mudra loans to young entrepreneurs. And out of this 18 lakhs crores, 8 lakh crore is given to the women borrowers. So that's the kind of empowerment, that is the kind of economic reforms that we are seeing in India at the grassroots level. In the same breath, if you see a couple of new laws that has come up. I was just reading drone rules. If you see this drone rules of 2021, that's a massive change that is aimed to bring at the grassroots level, especially at the agro-technology sectors. And that's again the insertion of the technology that we are talking about. I was hearing Mr. Modi a couple of days back on an India Today conclave, and he talked about in terms of drone pilots, and he said that Namo drone pilots, and that's the grassroots level. He's talking about how the women are made this drone pilots at the ground root level. India is slated to become a global drone hub by 2030, and then the total economic size, they are targeting the market size is about 13 billion US dollars, right? So that's the kind of change that you're seeing, be it in the terms of ADR. I mean, the Mediation Act has come up. You see how the ease of doing business is being promoted. And the whole focus is on mediation. We talk about the recently most controversial, the IPC changes. 511 sections have been reduced to 358 sections. That's the kind of changes that we are talking about. And probably in the couple of sessions, we will talk about how the decriminalizations has further given a boost to the Indian economy. But my sense is if you take a back seat and see the India picture overall, you will see that the whole reforms in the legislation, the whole reforms in the regulatory scenario is aimed towards ease of doing business. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your interventions, especially around doing ease of doing business, and especially the ability of small businesses to raise capital and be able to be part of the economy. So over to you, Professor Rashmi.
Thank you for your wonderful insights. So just to give some perspective on this topic of what could be the challenges for financial inclusion with respect to regulators, especially in the context of the G20 countries, I think as an academic, I would first begin with the very idea of what is financial inclusion. Reason being, when we talk in terms of G20 nations, it's a lot of countries, 20 countries, and they are placed very differently in terms of their history, their geography, their socio-political setup, their history. So having said that, since we know that these 20 countries are placed in their specific context, financial inclusion would mean very different things. And flowing from there, it will also mean very different motives and objectives for the regulators, bringing very different kind of challenges. To give an insight in this regard, if we talk in the context of India, for the Reserve Bank of India, our central bank, the socio-economic aspect of sustainable development has always been the lens to look at financial inclusion. So when we say about it, it means having infrastructural accessibility of banks in rural areas, making credit cheap in the agricultural sector, making women available, having women the availability of access to financial services, financial literacy. So in the Indian context, if we look at it, financial inclusion is more from a socio-economic lens. But countries within the G20 group who might have wonderfully achieved it on a comparative scale would have a very different lens to what financial inclusion means. Now here, I will borrow words from two scholars, Ulrich Volz and Dr. Knack. They talk about inclusive green finance. So making green finance accessible, as in have easier access of finance to those entrepreneurial projects that can reduce carbon emissions and help economies transition into a low carbon economy. Now, which also means that financial inclusion would include correct price consideration of all the material risk that banks would be facing. So that is, if not a level up, but a very different dimension to financial inclusion. So with these two different lenses of what financial inclusion means, if we look at regulators in India, the basic challenge, one of the basic challenges would be how to make the infrastructural facilities available. We have the priority sector lending for that. Also, we have the National Strategy for Financial Inclusion, which came up in 2019 to 2020. And to complement it, we also have the National Strategy for Financial Literacy, which is till 2025, if I'm correct. But when you look at countries who are working towards inclusive green finance, the other lens of financial inclusion, for them the challenges would be how to make banks consider sustainability-related financial risks into their bank portfolio, how to ensure that climate-related challenges are getting calculated within analyzing how much of lending risks they would incur, where they to lend to enterprises which are in, let's say, energy, for example, coal, gas, or in comparison to those companies who are working in a comparatively greener sector. But then I'll also add this, that there's a pinch of salt as to what green means here. Like we have already seen to the previous session on ESG, it's a horse that's running loose. We don't know where it's heading. So having said that, the role of regulators in tackling financial inclusion is going to be very, very different depending upon how they're viewing what financial inclusion is. And that's something that we really need to take note of. And just to add with that, the G20 countries will have to be acknowledging of each other's differences and then helping each other to fill up the gap of what financial inclusion means to each of them. So where their strength lies, they should contribute to the other's weaknesses and vice versa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Rashmi, for your comments, and especially like what really is the definition of inclusion and what finance includes really needs to be tackled from a holistic perspective. With that in mind, I would move on to my next panelist, Mr. Gada.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's very interesting to see such esteemed audience, such learned guys around. From my point of view, financial inclusion has two layers per se. Financial inclusion includes an individual as always, and of course, small businesses. Now, what are the reforms that the government has brought about as far as small businesses are concerned? Now, startup is the flavor of the season for last many, many years. Now, it's very important for us to understand what the government has done so far. Now, the government has put in place a Startup India Action Plan. The government has put in place the Fund of Funds for Startups with 10,000 crore corpus. The government has also come with this credit guarantee scheme for startups. The government has also come with this Startup India Seed Fund with 945 crores, which monies will be used towards proof of concept, prototype development, product trials. Now, all these things are in place. But the most interesting part, as a critique, I would like to bring up is that these powers, in some manner, have been given to SIDBI. Now, SIDBI is essentially a person or an entity which takes control of how these funds have to be deployed. Now, SIDBI essentially decides how these funds go down to when it is a fund of fund situation, how the funds are put in another fund. Now, there are various conditionalities put in place. These conditionalities essentially still curtail the idea of financial inclusion as far as small businesses are concerned. Now, why do I say so? SIDBI essentially is a bank. With due respect to all the people sitting in the office deciding things, it still is a bank. Now, when you need people to take calls which are dynamic in nature, which match up to today's situation, you can't have a SIDBI taking a call. They might bring in other people from various sectors to give their inputs, but still it's a bank. Unlike if I would compare it to any other animal which the government created was NIIF. Now, NIIF had these big guys, these big bureaucrats stepping in and starting to decide how infrastructure will be funded. Now, I believe the government needs to somehow in some fashion create another animal, another entity, another creature. Until that is done, the financial inclusion, how much ever hard the government works, how much ever big budget they come up with, I see a challenge how financial inclusion will take place for small businesses. Now that results into what? These small businesses are then required to raise monies either by way of debt or equity. Now debt, they get the usual bank rates. Equity, there are vultures in the VC world who will give them money with all the bells and whistles. So that is becoming a challenge. That's my point.
Thank you so much. And I think very interesting part of it, you really highlighted about the challenges which small businesses can face, and especially, the regulatory challenges which we face as hurdles, which could even include any existing challenges with respect to compliances. So with that in mind, I'll now move on to my next panelist, Mr. Awasthi.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's very, a place wherein we are very happy to hear this word called as financial inclusion. I mean, when I started this profession, there was a total regulatory logjam dilemma in the minds of judges, legislature, bureaucrats as to how the things will be resolved. But with this final inclusion, I think the first will be where there is a will, there is a way. So since there is a legislative intent, there is a bureaucratic intent, and a judicial intent to make this country a progressive country, I think this term financial inclusion has a very big role to play. Now, I think this entire theory of financial inclusion can, start the way that government is looking at these things. I think we can divide this 21st century into two parts, which is pre-IBC or post-IBC. I mean, when I started the profession, when I used to do a lot of project finance work, the lenders were just giving loans to the various companies, and they had no sight that whether the loan will come back, what will happen to them. There was a BIFER, SICA, IFER, all these kind of entities and forums were there where there was no sight of any case getting resolved. I think if these big industries who have gone into this SICA provisions, had there been some faster mechanism like IBC, things would have been very different. But it's never too late. So we have this IBC, which came into 2016, and there was host of insolvency that have happened, and banks are able to recover. So now, earlier there was no fear in the minds of the borrowers also whether they have to pay back or they don't have to pay back. But now, with IBC and clarity on invocation of personal guarantees and the corporate guarantees, I think promoters are very clear, and promoters have a very clear thought process in their mind that yes, if they have taken money, they will have to pay back. So number one is that. Number two, I mean, government has done tremendous initiative for including, the entire population into this financial inclusion theory. I think the tagline of G20 is Vasudev Kutumbakam, which is the whole earth is one family. So we have to have, be a part of this one family, and the way that we can do is by having each and every individual population to be a part of same family. So there was, before 2016-17, we used to struggle to have various rural households to have any bank account. Now with this Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, I think now more than 2/3 of the populations have bank accounts. Secondly, and more than 50% of those bank accounts are in the name of women. So there is a lot of inclusiveness that has been brought out by these kind of schemes that government has promulgated. Secondly, we have this, like Amar has said about this scheme called Mudra Yojana, wherein they are giving loans to various SMEs, various startups to start functioning, to develop the technology without having any fear of they getting out of business or they don't have money to even pay for their means. So yes, this scheme is very important. Then we also have the various insurance scheme and pension schemes like Atal Pension Yojana, wherein they are giving pensions to the people who are old or underprivileged. So that also helps in bringing the financial inclusion. On the regulatory side, I believe RBI has become very active. We can have, we can see the example of Paytm Bank, where there was certain non-compliances, and RBI was very upfront in giving them warning and then eventually cancelling the license. Then we also have these actions by the government, wherein government has become so focused on the home buyers, wherein they superseded the entire board of Unitech and placed various new directors to take the company to the next level. I think it's still in work in progress because a lot of time will be spent on having these projects restarted. A lot of funding will be required, but yes, it's a step in the right direction. Then we also have this, GST. When GST was not there, there was a lot of regulatory logjam in terms of how to pay the taxes, on what VAT is applicable in various states. But now, since we have a simple GST wherein there's a lot of clarity into what the tax rates are and how the tax are to be paid, I think it has really helped a lot of businesses in doing transaction interstate. Then we also have these small payments bank. These small payments bank, which were earlier nobody has heard of what is a small payment bank, but now these small payment banks are acting as a catalyst for the Indian economy and getting all those people who were not there earlier in the financial system to have their bank accounts, to have the ease of making payments. I think Paytm has played a massive role in having this financial inclusion in place. I mean, you go to any small shop or a cigarette vendor, I mean, they will take Paytm. So yes, they have become a part of this entire financial inclusion system, and I think it's a step in very, very right direction by the government.
Thank you so much. I think to this, especially for this sector and for finance to be actually inclusive, it needs to, the regulators need to work with businesses and other parties, and regulators cannot just sit in vacuum and think about what the law should be and how it should be. And regulators, especially talking about from the CCI's perspective, like CCI is doing multiple stakeholder meetings. They're going out there, going to different smaller cities as well, and meeting businesses to sort of understand what the role of law should be. Thank you. Ms. Tripathi.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I believe when we talk about the word financial inclusion, to me, it could be split into two. One is at a micro level, which would be applicable for certain smaller sections of society, like maybe the agriculture industry, or you could also see agriculture, though it obviously comprises 70% of income is agricultural income in India, if you see. So that way, it's not small. But I believe to certain areas where access to finance was not that easy, which has changed in the past few years with ease reforms being developed by the Ease Steering Committee, which has obviously led to a lot of digitalization in the space. The relationship between money and women has always been complicated. And if you see in the past few years, all of us, including our house helps, people in rural areas also have access to all the Paytm, all these apps. There's also a rise in the women entrepreneurs in the past few years. And if you look at the startups in India, most of the startups, about 80% startups, are by young entrepreneurs who have no background of any financial stability, no people backing them up. So I believe in terms of inclusion, yes, there's been a lot. However, if you look at the macro level, specifically with respect to the banking sector in India, while IBC has played a lot of role in recoveries, I believe in the past 5 years, we've seen a vast almost from, I remember the earlier transactions that were, we've seen, there were 80-90% haircuts. I think with IBC moving at a slightly faster pace, I think the recoveries have risen in the past 2-3 years. So while we're talking about financial inclusion, I think one of the challenges that I have seen is the fact that we should not reach a state where we have to, look at winding up insolvency, because this is a thing of the West. In India earlier, this was not so common. While there are guarantees by promoters, there are personal guarantees, whether they're triggered, whether by triggering them anything is actually recoverable is something that we need to question, because as far as corporate guarantees are concerned, even a lot of us look at them as a piece of paper where nothing's actually recovered once you invoke guarantees. So I think a stricter regulatory regime around who is giving a guarantee, because if we go for a home loan, I mean, they'll definitely recover money out of us. Whereas these large corporates are, taking a lot of loan on their books, and when it comes to recoveries, there are 60, 70, 40% haircuts. And at the end of the day, it's, the public's money that's being lost in the process. So we need to, while financial inclusion is very important, I think we need to still build a very, very strong regulatory framework to ensure that the person giving guarantees, specifically, in the past few years, because every 5 years, 7 years, there's a complete different trend in terms of change in the sector where the government, is focusing. Initially, it was thermal. I think maybe 2008-9, it started with the solar reforms and the wind reforms, wherein we were able to, progress very fast. I remember there was a 30 gigawatt mission which changed immediately to 60, 150, 200, and we're looking at a huge, investment in the solar renewable sector. Now it's with the recent G20, there's also a lot of thrust in the biogas space. So while these are there, green energy sounds good, clean energy sounds good, but for it to be sustainable, it has to be cheaper. At the same time, you also have investors looking at they have clear expectations on the IRR. So to balance the two is not something that's easy. So financial inclusion has to, take into consideration all these points, and then maybe, we'll probably be progressing where we want to progress. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think your point, especially on access to finance and who has access to that finance, was very, very important. So I think now my next question, I'll start from your side. Especially when you talk about accessibility of finance, we also want to talk about women entrepreneurship, which has increased in the recent times. But there are still challenges which they remain. And while women do run the world, how do you think we make this more accessible?
So I think one of the most important thing I feel at a personal level is literacy, financial literacy. That's something we lack. In schools in India, you need to teach your kids how to save money. That's one specific aspect. We've been traditionally told that, money is something that has, there'll be a bread earner in the family, and that person will take care of your financial needs. That is changing. And we've also seen a lot of, change in inclusion in terms of diversity, specifically wherein we have funds focusing on diversity across all levels, and they want, women also to participate in managerial decisions. They want women on the board of companies. Companies Act has come with an amendment wherein, women, there has to be a mandatory women director on the board. So these changes are important. And I believe, like we have agenda for everything, whenever the government has to implement a specific agenda, it could be with respect to certain, a mission for solar, it could be a mission for agriculture reforms. I think when we talk about women empowerment, there has to be some mandatory participation of women across government sectors. So once that gets included, I think there will be some change. And of course, financial literacy is something that we need to all be aware of. And that itself will empower women to, be able to add more and have ease of access to finance. Yeah.
What Bhumika said is absolutely right, and I've been, advocating for financial literacy, especially in those sectors which are like agriculture sector, wherein it's sometimes very, very dominated by men. But now, there's a lot of emphasis being given by government in making women, literate, especially on the terms of for the financing. I was talking to Sairi Chal. She's one of the founders of Sheroes, and they do a massive job in promulgating this entire concept of financial literacy to women. They are giving loans, micro loans to these women entrepreneurs, and they have been able to nurture a lot of startups which are in the rural sector and which deals with rural produce. And these kind of steps actually helps in women empowerment, as well as getting women into the real financial system, which we used to think 10 years back that there's nothing for women. But now I think government is also taking a lot of steps, and our finance minister is also a woman. She's really interested in having this entire ecosystem of women entrepreneurship, women empowerment into the mainstream. So I think it's very, very important for have these kind of schemes for women.
My view is a little bit different on this. Now, while the government has done what government had to do, and we have sufficient representation of women at the cabinet, in the parliament, Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, assemblies, wherever, we are talking about women being there. Women are there. There is no doubt about it. Now, this is a misnomer. It's a farce that women aren't active, or they aren't a sought after founders for funding purposes. That's a completely wrong understanding of India. Completely wrong. please look at these fancy Shark Tank India kind of things. Please look at the panelist. Please understand. Now we are beating ourselves down, and we are not, by making these statements that women aren't being represented well, that's an insult. That's not how we should perceive things. Please look at various universities. The university deans are women. Please look at banks. The chairmen are women. Getting down the path and beating ourselves up that was women aren't there, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's an insult to women. Now we have various law firms headed by women. Please understand. I'm not talking only India. You talk globally as well. So I don't want to get down the path and argue that out at all.
It's not about arguing, Bhavin. What I feel is we are talking about women who already. So Bhavin, it's not about we seeing women not being actually in the industry, whether it's a law firm, whether it's a Shark Tank program that we see that women are coming, but you have to go to those tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 cities wherein you will see what kind of illiteracy about the financial sector that women have. They're still living in those old days. I mean, we sitting in this metropolitan city, we can very well say that yes, women are there, but no, there is I will say, not even 20% of the women, even in this metropolitan city will be financially in the financial system, I would say. But actually, real financial inclusion for women, if you go to these cooperative societies in Gujarat, there you will see that there is women which is actually running the family. But again, I've been to rural sites quite by myself, because I advise few of the clients who are into this microfinancing, and you will really see that yes, they are making a lot of efforts to get these women into the system, but still there is a large strata of society which has women which still are away from this financial inclusion theory.
Abhishek, I am with you. Yeah. I am not disputing your view. All that I'm trying to say is that this entire picture that is being drawn about India, women in India, like our mothers, our sisters, our friends, that's not correct. And as far as villages and tier 2 cities are concerned, the household is run by a woman. So the guy, the man of the house will make the money, give it to the woman. So financial literacy, if we are looking at financial literacy from the point of view that woman doesn't have the access to banking sector, maybe yes. But financial literacy, my belief is that women are more equipped to do budgeting than men. We will falter, they will not.
Thank you so much. A meaningful dialogue definitely includes some agreements, some disagreements. So
we are lawyers, we have bound to have disagreements.
Absolutely.
We'll argue otherwise also.
Yes. Professor Rashmi.
Hello. Yeah. Wow, that was a wonderful debate. Okay, so I think I'll start with a short story, a more personal story at that end. So I have a lady who comes and does the house cleaning. So I have a house help. And 2 to 3 years back, she was quite fascinated with a specific utensil that I have in my kitchen. And she said that, Didi, I'll translate for those who are not comfortable with Hindi. दीदी आप मेरी महीने की तनख्वाह से मेरे को ये अमेज़ॉन से ऑर्डर कर दोगे मुझे घर के लिए लेना है I'm like translating can you get this utensil for me by from a part of the monthly salary you get it from Amazon no please I want it for my home kitchen and I'm like okay let me just see what the cost is and I'll get a confirmation from you and it turned out to be quite a little expensive and she said that okay, I'll have a word with my husband. Now, she came after 2 days and she said that, Didi, aap order mat karo. Don't order it. My husband is saying that we don't require it right now. She works not only in my own house, but there are other couple of colleagues that she's a house help in their places. She earns quite a bit of around 13 to 14,000 a month, roundabout. She has done her schooling till 12th. She's literate. She's earning perhaps more than her husband, and I say that because he had suffered certain injuries which incapacitates him to do all kinds of activities. So his source of, the fact that she went into running her house, providing income, going and earning income from outside was because her husband was incapacitated in some manner, which means she contributes either complementing what her husband earns or maybe more. She knows what a bank is. She can do her math. She has accessibility. She has people who can help her. So everything is given almost on the plate. If not everything, let me not be that generous. Okay, she's quite aware of what she has available, right? But she doesn't have agency. She doesn't have autonomy. Now, this is what I say from a very grassroots level. And I would open this question to, in fact, everyone in this room, all the women in this room, that are you comfortable making your own financial decisions, your investments? Do your male members and other members at home are confident of how you handle your money? You may be much above in the earning game, but are you confident of how you handle what comes in your bank account every month? Well, in my family, there have been concerns, if not by my own parents, but yes, from long-distance relatives, if I know where to invest and how to invest. Questioning if I can have the equitable amount of agency as a man would have, or any other gender would have. And this would also go into all the entire LGBTQ community. So having said that, women empowerment, financial literacy, of course, they are very, very important pillars to ensure financial inclusion. But they are not the sole recipe or the only recipe for the solution of, women having the accessibility to money. There are other problems in the society, which I would, again, like an academic say, from a systems thinking point of view, there are other challenges within the social setup which makes it impossible or will create even much more hurdles of women taking an independent call on the very money that they earn for themselves and their families. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing it. Yes.
I have a staff which is with me for past 25 years, and he has 5 kids, 4 girl child and a male child. Okay, the guy used to get a salary and he used to fend means for all the 7 of them, and their kids used to come to our home. We used to play together when we were kids. The story, when I say this story, I really feel sad that these kids were not able to study. They were not going to the school, so my father made them to go to school. Now that girl, she's a lawyer. She's doing so well in her life because we were able to force her to study, and then she also showed so much interest in becoming a lawyer. Now she is managing her father's salary. So I feel this is what real financial inclusion is.
Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Sundaram.
Just one little anecdote. Just one little anecdote, please. So, Rashmi, while the woman goes back to the husband to ask what to do, please ask anybody, do we as men are able to decide for ourselves if we are married? We have to go back to our respective women.
So, Sidharth, when we talk about India, we are talking about 140 crores of population. And we are not talking only about Delhi, Bombay, Hyderabad, Bangalore, or metros. We are also talking about grassroots level change that we are talking about. In the metros and bigger cities, a lot has been done. In the grassroots level, a lot is being done. And my sense is that a lot is required to be done. Financial inclusion, awareness towards finances is something which needs to be further consolidated. More needs to be done. We have not reached to a stage where we can confidently say that all women in the rural sectors are financially literate or empowered. A lot is being done. And as I said, just one example of Mudra loan disbursement of 18 lakhs crores, 8 lakh crore was disbursed to women borrowers. That's the kind of effort which is being made by the government. We are talking about technologies. Rashmi talked about Amazon. These technologies and the push towards digital India, the UPI payments, all these are a mode to further make women financially literate, educated, And over a period of time, we will see that even the women in the rural sectors will be more literate and more confident as we see today. 10 years back, they were less confident. Today, they are more confident. 10 years from now, we'll see a changed India.
Yeah, thank you so much for putting those numbers in place and to understand the entire context, especially from our country's perspective, which is extremely diverse, and the kind of numbers we currently have. We all have been speaking about digital access and digital inclusion as well in the initial bits, but I definitely want to sort of talk about and discuss, like, with this push to digitalization, there's also concerns around, say, digital theft and some sort of financial frauds. So how do you think the G20 countries can collaborate, or maybe, what should be, how they can come together and probably discuss this at a more holistic level?
Very relevant point, Sidharth. If you see the whole focus of the G20 countries and the recent concluded meeting was, one of the major theme was digital collaboration among G20 countries. As I always say that more and more advancement of technology, there will be more and more crimes which will be there. The different kind of crimes which you will see. On one hand, there is a whole push towards digitization. There is a whole push towards digital and technology changes. We talk about AI, we talk about ML, but at the same time, we also talk about cyber frauds. We also talk about cyber crimes. Now, these things are bound to happen, and these things will evolve over a period of time. There will be new laws which will coming up. Just 2 days back, I was just evaluating a comparison between the Indian Penal Code and the new Penal Code which has come up. A very interesting thing which I saw in section 467, which talked about the forging of the documents. Interestingly, they incorporated this time forging of documents, and documents, they specifically mention ID documents, and they specifically mention voter ID card, Aadhaar card, because these are the documents which is getting forged today. So there is a whole effort to, curb the cybercrime as much as possible. But as I said, with the evolution of technologies, these are financial crimes, these are cyber-related crimes which will evolve and which will change with a period of time.
Thank you. Any of our panelists?
See, one of the things that other countries should do is to adopt UPI like other countries have adopted. I mean, this will bring India into more, centric role, and, this technology.
Abhishek, just to add to what you just said, I was in Tokyo a couple of weeks back.
Japan accepts that, yeah.
And I was feeling that why UPI is not there. So India is what? India is 40% of the global digital payment is happening in India. Right? Today, it has created a revolution across the world. My daughter doesn't carry cash money, and I keep telling her that please carry cash money. She doesn't carry cash money. India has completely revolutionized as far as digital payment is concerned. And that's a huge revolution. Many countries have reached out to India and to understand how this digital payment has happened. Now, with such deep penetration of digital payments, the crimes will also happen, which is bound to happen. But these are fallouts of any kind of a technological developments.
If I may.
Yeah.
So the way we have IP rules or IP laws in some manner unified across the globe, I believe it's not only the rule of G20. I think in some manner all the countries under the umbrella of UN need to come together and have some uniformity on cyber crimes. That's where the issue is. Now, once we have a uniformity across the globe, now all the countries need to work together. We are far ahead as far as tech is concerned as against all the countries. Like a few data points, like as far as fintech sector is concerned, we have 14% share in the global funding. We are number 2 on deal volume. Fintech market is going to be around 2.1 trillion by 2030. Now 2030 is just around the corner. I think the immediate need is for maybe people like us, India, to lead it and bring in some guidelines on uniformity around cyber crimes. Now, we are the leaders, we need to accept it, we need to get out of that phase that we are going to follow what the world does. No, we need to lead it now. We pure play copied what GDPR said into our data protection. I think we need to lead the world now. on as far as cyber crimes and ideas around cyber crimes are concerned?
Also, I have a small point to add here. I believe, treaties between two nations as far as cybercrime is concerned need to be strengthened. Like earlier we had, these countries where you could, Cyprus and, other countries through which you can route, and get a lot of tax savings. Similarly, there are countries like Nigeria where today we see, all the cybercrime is happening. I mean, and there's no way to kind of have access to those people, and there's no way you can trace those people. So strengthening the treaties and, enhancing the way in which you can recover, even through these nations which otherwise are not cooperating, I think that's one thing that we need to do. Additionally, as far as cyber theft is happening, at least where people are stealing PAN cards, ID cards, I believe that's one step that we should have addressed at the very stage of starting PAN card, Aadhaar, because as on today, I believe our PAN cards, Aadhaar cards, they're all out there. So the reforms that are happening may happen now, but I believe these reforms should have happened back then when the access to these cards was being given to even to buy a SIM maybe.
Absolutely.
So strengthening them today would be a little difficult unless we completely abolish these and start another identification system which could be common to all certain countries. I think that's going to be a little difficult from enforcement perspective. Yeah.
Okay, so with respect to digitization, I think I'd like to highlight a different problem, which would be the digital divide, which can lead to financial exclusion. Now, that can happen from various angles, but I have one specific angle to choose, which I don't think we will have a very, I think we can't have a man-made solution to it unless we come up with the elixir of life that will keep us youthful, which is old age. And when we say G20 countries, I'll love to share some data with all of you, which is as per the UN Population Division's webpage. In 2019, the G20 member countries are a home to 70% of 65 plus years individuals, and this is expected to grow from 501 million in 2019 to 705 million in 2030. And it's also expected to reach to 1 billion in the year 2050. So while the G20 member countries are doing digitization to promote financial inclusion, really applauded, but we should also think of how as individuals we interact with technology, and our perception changes as we tend to age. And I think everyone here at the dais, in the audience, will relate how our elderly members in the family interact with technology, how their psychological and social perceptions are. They may be too scared to accept a new technology. They may be too uncomfortable. They may be too suspicious of new kind of financial products that may be launched even in their benefit, which can make acceptance of financial products to promote financial inclusion very, very difficult, which basically very much counteracts the entire aim of financial inclusion, leading to financial exclusion. So I think from a policy and regulatory point of view, the G20 countries will have to also indulge themselves into interdisciplinary research to really understand how old age groups interact with technology and how that can go on to affect the digitization of finance in these countries. That's all.
Thank you so much. In the interest of time.
One little point, sure. Closing remark, just supplementing Bhumika's point. So the way we should lead to create some laws or guidelines on cyber crimes, the way we have DTAA, I think we should have a bilateral, trilateral, multilateral treaties where people sitting in India are protected by frauds happening or emanating from other countries. I think we can take a cue from what we already had. We need to just work around it to take care of the present problem. We don't need to go and reinvent anything.
All right, thank you. In the interest of time, just one quick question from our audience. Professor Raj. Okay, two. If, okay.
Thank you, panel, for the informative session. Yes, so I wanted to highlight, like, take the direction towards trade financing issue. Uh, so, uh, the G20 was initiated at the time of like financial crisis. And when the financial crisis is hit, mostly it affects the MSMEs. And at that time, G20 countries had discussed about addressing the trade finance gap and asking for monies from multilateral development banks. And this was discussed even during the India G20 presidency, as I was part of the G20 negotiations with Department of Commerce. So, and when it comes to trade finance gap, mostly vulnerable groups are more susceptible to getting their loans rejected because of the lack of collateral. So in that context, like, digital finance play a crucial role. Based on the invoice factoring, based on their transaction history, they get loan based on their financial profile. So financial literacy would play a very crucial role, which was highlighted. But still, so my question is, like, what the industry is doing, like, when it comes to addressing these issues, because not only banks are involved in it, like multilateral corporations, multinational corporations are basically, they have the power to like give the trade finance, like reduce the trade finance gap by giving access to finance to MSMEs. So,
Yeah, there's one small point I'd like to add here. As far as MSMEs are concerned, they're given some respite under the new MSME rules, right? And wherever there is any international or any even domestic economic crisis, while I agree that the MSMEs and smaller industries do get affected, with the current regime, what's happening is it's yet to test the water, but all I can say is there's so much fear that there's a notice from MSME that comes to anyone, and you're expected to pay a penalty of about 18%. So you immediately pay up. I mean, that's something I have seen, and I think if there is one thing that really affects these MSMEs, it's the recovery, right? The turnaround time in terms of you being able to get your money back. So that itself, as on today, is a very effective tool. A lot of companies are also facing a lot of issues because everyone's really scared. Like I said, it's yet to test the waters in courts, but it's a very fast way of recovering, and every big company, while dealing with MSME, is making sure that the payments to the MSME is happening faster, which would, of course, enable them to have more money to, kind of plow back to the business.
Yeah, just
You know what? Now, if you are not making payments to MSME, you have to make disclosures in your reports. And none of the investor who is coming and investing into a company which has not made payment to the MSME, they will not make any investments. ESG standard, etc., standard.
45 days. You have to make the payment within 45 days, otherwise interest starts running. So that's the whole focus. And as Abhishek rightly said, the Companies Act has, the ministry has come out with a notification saying that please share the data, how many MSMEs have not been paid, what is the data, where the pendencies of this data. So there is a great push by the government towards compliance as far as the payment to MSME sector is concerned. On the smaller ticket size, as I said, Mudra Yojana, 10 lakhs loan, no collateral is required. And interestingly, if you see the data points, the NPA has come down to 3.9%. With all these efforts, the NPA has come down. So despite not having a collateral, the collection is not becoming a problem for many of these NBFCs and the cooperative banks. So today, I think this situation has changed. People are compliant. They know that if they default on one, probably they will not get another loan.
Okay, thank you so much. I think one last question for the day. In the interest of time, we're so sorry, just one question.
I just want to say that, it has been a very uplifting panel, which has painted a very, very positive picture about all the good things that are happening. But I do worry about the fact that is the reality that we are facing is probably far worse than what we are looking at. So in terms of pure data, I mean, let's talk about gender itself. I see multiple reports, 5% of Indian CEOs are women, 4% of Indian CFOs are women. In terms of leadership positions, less than 20% representative across any corporations and companies. That's on the number. And we know, of course, the state of Indian judiciary, legal community, it's all out there. So my question is that while all of this data surrounding financial inclusion is being talked about, to what extent we can actually see change in the society unless we dramatically change the entire mindset and culture of individuals leading it. Anecdotal evidence, as much as it gives us a kind of a positive feeling, the reality is we need to move into institutional data. Look at our law firms, companies, corporations, business enterprises, and boardrooms. Even today, it is dominated by men and men only. Bhavin, I'm sorry to say that you mentioned about academia. The reality is, academia is among the far worse situation, across not just in India, around the world. We are looking at less than 25% of faculty members who are women. Leadership positions is even lesser. Jindal University is an exception. We have 55% full-time faculty women, 70% leadership position women, but we are outlier. We are not at all to be compared. No university in India, no university in the world has our kind of gender, parity. But my point is, when we talk about financial inclusion, we are also talking about established power structures in our families and in our society. You can keep on putting all this money and showing data, but so long as we don't dismantle the power structures in our family and in our tradition and our society, we will not be able to address the financial inclusion aspiration.
I completely agree with you. The data point that you raised are not only true to India, first point. It's across the globe. So beating ourselves down that India is this, that was my concern.
We have to beat the whole world.
I say it is the whole world. But the narrative today, which is being run, India is thinking in so-and-so fashion, India is orthodox. I don't like that, personally. And I'm being very vocal about it. But, Professor, I'm with you that this needs to come down up.
No, but Bhavin, if we want to play the big game, the world will observe us. Either you be a country in sub-Saharan Africa or somewhere that people may not, really be concerned about what it does. But if you want to be part of the G20, if you want to be developing a $10 trillion economy, if you want to play global leadership, you will be under scrutiny. So you can't have both. So if you are going to be part of the global league, you will be under scrutiny. You can't then say, why we are under scrutiny, so many others are. Yes, but they are not necessarily assuming a leadership role. With leadership comes responsibility.
I can,
With you.
No, I just want
Let's
to say
work around it. Let's work around it.
I want to add one point. You can respond to.
Good things take more time. Excellent will take the most.
One last observation, Sidharth. I really want to talk about this because, I want to put this question to panel because, 2 years back I was writing a lot on cryptocurrency and I was looking at the scenario in India, prevailing scenario. We all spoke about who in the concept of financial inclusion, but we did not even make an attempt as to what. Because I think money is not just money today. Money has different representation, different definitions, different, identity, honestly speaking. And the last 2 years, the amount of wealth that crypto has created for startups, how it has helped hedge companies on inflation is phenomenal. And if anybody does make an effort to read crypto, it is one of the currencies which has the highest financial inclusions, which has removed all entry barriers, completely decentralized, and has provided phenomenal growth for startups. So in the background of that, I think it'll be useful for all of us also to talk, not as to who is eligible for inclusion, but what all can become part of this, the entire idea of financial inclusion. With that, I will stop.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I think this is what we really call a thoughtful discussion, which gives discussion point to our audience. Our audience gets involved. So a round of applause for my staff panelists. A round of applause for our guests who have been here since morning. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.